You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
There's a team that's in our hearts. We've got love that won't depart. We are always in the stands, 'cause we're super Dolphin fans. Football is mighty rough. Winning gets awful tough. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins. We're rooting for the Dolphins. Our mighty, mighty Dolphins.
Hello, Miami Dolphin fans, and welcome to the Same Old Dolphin Show, part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I'm Josh Kotzker. With me today and every day is my brother from the exact same mother, Aaron the Brain. Aaron, say hello to the people.
Hello to the people.
Here we are, Brain. The dust has begun to settle from we'll call it the first wave of NFL free agency. It's not NFL free agency blanket statement, because that's going to continue all the way on, all the way through the summer, even into training camp, I think. But this is the first wave where the dust is truly now beginning to settle. And what is beginning to happen is that a clearer picture of how the Miami Dolphins are planning to approach this offseason is at least beginning to emerge a little bit. It's not the entire picture. It's not perfectly sharp. It's very much like if you can think back to the 80s, if you didn't have cable television, you turned on, channel 33 on the UHF or the VHF television back in the day. It wasn't totally clear, but you could begin to see the picture taking shape, and that is kind of what we're looking at right now as the Dolphins 2025 offseason begins to take shape a little bit. So, Brain, what are just your early thoughts on free agency? And then what we'll do today on the show is we'll talk about the signings that we think are what we'll call the good signings. Then we'll talk about some signings that are neutral signings to us. And then we'll talk about signings that are bad to us, I think is going to be the agenda here, that are maybe head-scratching signings, if you will. So just quick overall thoughts so far, and then we'll really get stuck in here.
I guess my big overall thought so far is that they are not approaching this offseason, this first wave of free agency, at least, because look, granted, like, there's a lot left of free agency. You have the entire draft, post June 1st stuff, training camp, those cuts. So there's a lot that needs to happen before you have a 53-man roster that you're ready to go into the season with. So it's important to not just jump to a sweeping conclusion at this point, which is a very early stage in the free agent in the off season. But that said, thus far, they are not approaching this off season like a team that is that has Super Bowl aspirations. I will say that.
Yeah, it's certainly I think is fair to say, but also at the same time, I would look at that and I would say, I think that they are approaching things in very much the way that you might have expected them to, right? This is not something that Chris Greer it's not unheard of for him, right? He typically takes it slow. He's not splashing out big cash on big names. For the most part, he typically likes to take things slow. He likes to pump the brakes on them a little bit. And that's kind of what we've looked at so far in this offseason. It has been we're not going to splash out the cash. And I think it makes sense when you look at this offseason, because it's not like there was a lot of big name, high price talent out there. I would say that there was probably more opportunity in this offseason to overpay on guys than typically exists. And we'll get into what I mean, there's always opportunities to overpay for guys, but I think this year there are fewer guys out on the market that you would say, yes, let's make sure that we splash a ton of cash on those guys. We're going to get into the nitty gritty of those thoughts a little bit later in the show. But that's kind of like the general overview as we, look at this kind of first week and a half now since the free agency, the legal tampering window has opened, and things have, that kind of is how you set the table for it. Yeah. Go ahead. You seem like you have something you want to say.
I just want to say, like, I don't necessarily agree with what you said about, like, this is Chris Greer's MO. I think this is what Chris Greer did last year. And prior to that, this was not his MO. Prior to that, the same old Dolphins thing to do. I'll give them credit. Like, this is not the same old Dolphins way to approach the offseason, because the Dolphins historically are the winners of the offseason. They're the quote unquote winners of free agency by going out and making the splashy signings. And that's not what they're doing. So I'm going to give Chris Greer credit for his, fiscal responsibility, his restraint that he showed last year and that he's shown this thus far this year. I won't say that is his MO and that's what he's, typically done. But I'll save my overarching opinion of the way that he's handled free agency, at least this first wave. I'll save that for later.
All right. Well, fair enough. So as I said, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of take a look at the signings and break them into what we have, like our good signings. We'll put everything in quotes. How about that? We'll put all of these categories in quotes: the good signings, the neutral signings, and then I don't think we need to put the bad signings in quotes. I think we can leave those out of quotes, at least for our purposes. And here's how we're going to do this. We're going to talk about the good. We're going to talk about the neutral. And then this free stream that you were watching live on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel and the I'm a Miami Dolphin fan Facebook page, which we are very glad to have you watching on. That feed is going to die. And then we are going to finish the show over on Dolphins Talk Extra, talking about the absolute bad signings and then kind of going into a little bit more granular detail about how we feel like this free agency period is gone for the Dolphins. So what you need to do, if you have not done so already, is head on over to patreon.com/Dolphins Talk, where you can subscribe for as little as $3 a month to Dolphins Talk Extra. You'll get this entire episode of the Same Old Dolphin Show. You'll also get bonus podcasts. You'll also have the opportunity to participate in 2 contests, not 1, but 2 contests that we have running right now over at Dolphins Talk Extra. The first is a contest that you were signed up to automatically just by signing up for Dolphins Talk Extra. You'll be entered into a drawing to win a Tyreek Hill bobblehead doll. So you can do that. And then you also have the opportunity to join our March Madness pool. That's right. We're doing a March Madness pool just for Dolphins Talk Extra subscribers, and the winner is going to get a very rare Tua Tagovailoa bobblehead doll. So that is available to you as well over at Dolphins Talk Extra. Again, patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. You can join for as little as $3 a month. And of course, the last part of our podcast today is going to be exclusive over there at Dolphins Talk Extra. Also want to give a shout out to our good friends at Caneswear, caneswear.com, the one place to go to for all of your South Florida college and professional sporting team needs, whatever. It's a jersey, it's a shirt, it's a hat, it's sunglasses, it's a shot glass. Caneswear.com is going to have you covered. And again, a special shout out to all of our friends watching on the I'm a Miami Dolphin fan Facebook page. If you have not yet, make sure that you download, rate, review, and subscribe to the Same Old Dolphin Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, everywhere you get your podcasts. And make sure you're visiting DolphinsTalk.com each and every day. It is your one-stop shop for all things Miami Dolphins. Smash the like button on this video if you haven't done so already. We appreciate that very much. Subscribe to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel as well. All right, let's get into it. And let's start with what I think is probably the best overall signing that the Dolphins have made in this free agency period. And this is, again, my opinion, but to me, I think the best signing that they've made is Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, who is going to come in and step in and be the wide receiver 3 for the Miami Dolphins. This is a very good signing. He's basically slotting into the role that it seemed the Dolphins had carved out for Eric Ezukanma to take, but Eric Ezukanma, dealing with injuries and just an inability to come in and be that guy, has left the Dolphins looking for that big physical receiver who could not only be a target in the passing game, but also be able to block and help out in the running game. They've been unable to find that guy, but now they're bringing in Nick Westbrook-Ikhine from Tennessee, and he's going to slot into that role perfectly. And what makes this signing so great is that this is also a guy who has been, knock on wood, a pretty healthy player, which makes him not just a standout just in general, but particularly in this free agent class for the Miami Dolphins.
And that's not the thing that really makes this contract great. The thing that makes this contract great is the value. It's the fact that they signed him for, what is it, like 2 years, $6.5 million? And it's like, basically first year guaranteed, second year, basically it depends what he does in the first, pretty standard stuff. But it's like, to get a solid number 3 receiver that is going to block their ass off and gives you a downfield threat, is a bigger body, is going to immediately be the biggest receiver on the roster, save for Jonnu Smith, who technically is a tight end. A guy who's a red zone threat, 9 touchdowns last season. I don't think he's going to be a huge piece of the passing game, but he is going to be a piece. And then when you consider what he can do as a blocker and you consider the value, this is a great signing. This is the one signing that I don't think really anybody could say anything negative about. I just think this is fills a role that is necessary, and the contract that is given, I think this is a home run signing.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I just think the fit is right. And this is a guy who the Dolphins don't have anybody like him on the roster. And to have him come in and fill this role for them, I think is going to be really exceptional. And I think that's something that you've got to be excited about from a Dolphins perspective. So I really like this signing. I'm really happy about it. There are 2 other signings that the Dolphins made that I think I can classify as good signings, but they come with the significant caveat of the fact that while they are players with tremendous upside, they're 2 guys, they are absolute Chris Greer specials. They are guys that are going to provide the upside that the Dolphins need at 2 positions of need, but they're coming in with significant injury questions. One is safety Ifeatu Melifonwu. I think I got that pretty good there. Ifeatu Melifonwu at safety. That's a big one. And then the other one is James Daniels, the guard from previously the Pittsburgh Steelers that the Dolphins brought in. And listen, Daniels was outstanding last year for Pittsburgh before suffering an Achilles injury. And Melifonwu has been a very good safety. He's right in that realm of like what the Dolphins wanted Javon Holland to be. He has the opportunity to fill in and kind of fit into that role. But his problem is that he has just been cursed with injury problems. And I think that is this is just another example of it's a Chris Greer special. And when I say that, it's players with upside that you're getting at a bargain, but you're getting them at a bargain because they have significant injury questions. And more often than not, when the Dolphins take a gamble on those types of players, it ends up coming back to bite them in the butt. And so that's where I think it's a little bit of a tricky situation with these guys. But on their face, and again, if they can stay healthy, and understanding that if is an enormous question, these are guys who could become very big impact signings for the Miami Dolphins, in particular, James Daniels at guard.
This is actually not where I thought you were going to go with the two signings that could be classified as good, but I follow the logic, and they are similar with the injury caveat. I think the James Daniels signing is a good signing. I think he's been a good player. He's been a solid starting guard in this league for 7 years now, 6-7 years.
Yep.
And he's still pretty young considering his experience. I think he's coming into his age 27 or age 28 season. And he hasn't been a guy with a huge injury history. He's just a guy who blew out his Achilles last season. And he did it, after 4 games. So he suffered the injury early enough that you would think, especially considering the kind of the buzz that we got out of it and how early they signed him in free agency, you would think that they've done their due diligence, and that he's going to be ready to go right into training camp. And so the injury risk is baked in to the price. The fact that you're getting him at $8 million a year, it's like a 3-year, $24 million contract. So the value is there, but the value is there because the injury risk is baked in. I will say that he doesn't have this lengthy injury history, but the Achilles injury is a tough one to come back from. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But for the value and for the fact that he's been a solid guard, I do think this is a pretty good signing. I'm going to talk about Melifonwu next, and then the other signing that I think I would classify as a good signing after that. I think you're overstating Melifonwu as being what the Dolphins hope Javon Holland would be, because I don't think I think that's a bit much. I think Melifonwu had a good season in 2023, and I think he's a versatile player, being that, he played cornerback in college, and so he has that requisite athleticism, but he was moved to safety it was identified very early on that he was not going to be able to be an outside corner at this level. So I think he's a guy that can play some slot corner for you, but I think he does his best work in the box. He can play some deep safety, but I think if he's playing deep safety, I think he's more of like a cover 2 safety where he's got some help and he's got one half of the field. I don't think this is a guy that you could put in like a single high like you can do with Javon Holland. He's not that kind of guy. He doesn't have that kind of range and athleticism. I think this is a guy that is going to make his hay in the box as a box safety and can play a little bit in the slot. And so the guy that he kind of reminds me of, like if Dolphin fans are like trying to find a comp to him, as far as what kind of impact he's gonna have here, or what kind of impact they hope that he's gonna have, I would say rookie deal Brandon Jones. Like a guy that can be moved around, a guy that is going to make an impact as a blitzer, a guy who's going to help in run support, can do some things in coverage and be moved around. But I think if you get into the mindset of this guy's going to be an every down deep safety, no, I think you'll be disappointed, and I think it would be a mistake. But again, part of that is baked into the price. It's like a 1-year, $4 million deal.
Every time you say baked into the price, there is a certain member of the Dolphins Talk Extra Discord community that I know is like pulling out some of their hair.
Okay, Patrick. I think the injury concerns with Melifonwu are more significant, because right now everybody that is praising this move is is basically hanging their hat on his 2023 season, which is the only season in his career thus far. And I think he's played 4 seasons, 4 or 5 seasons. I think 4 seasons. It's the only year in his career that he's played at least 10 games. So this guy has an injury history that is worse than Teron Armstead. Like, if you think Teron Armstead's injury history is bad, Teron Armstead is a more reliable piece than Ifeatu Melifonwu. And Melifonwu is not coming in to be like, a major piece. But I think this is a guy that if your safety room is built correctly, is probably your third safety. And then I did want to make mention.
Yes, you had one other signing that you would classify as a good signing. I want to hear about this.
And that's Zach Wilson.
Here we go. Now let's get into it.
Because I know that this has been a polarizing move. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Zach Wilson is absolutely going to be the second coming. And that
here's what I want to say before you go on this monologue here. I just want to point out, for everybody listening at home, and Dolphins Talk Extra subscribers kind of know how I feel about this already, because I did an episode shortly after this signing was made last week exclusively for Dolphins Talk Extra. But I just want to say that I don't think there is any better illustration of how down bad the Miami Dolphins fan base is as a whole than the fact that there was like a 3-day back and forth online of people arguing about Zach Wilson being signed as the backup quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. Like, the fact that there was this intense heated argument about the Dolphins signing Zach Wilson to be their backup quarterback. That is the illustration that you need, that the Miami Dolphins fan base, whoo, baby, are we down bad?
Look, that might be the case. I mean, I don't understand the vitriol. Like, I can understand people that are like, whatever, it's a backup quarterback. I don't understand the people that can't follow the logic of it, because we sat here basically for months before the season ended. We talked about how the Dolphins were going to need to address their backup quarterback situation, and that they were, at the same time that they were going to be needing to look for a backup quarterback, they were also going to have an eye on finding potentially a quarterback of the future because of Tua Tagovailoa's uncertainty due to his injury history. And so you really have 2 options. I guess you have 3 options. You can pick a high floor backup quarterback and hope that Tua is healthy, and you forgo, drafting somebody. And you just hope that Tua is healthy. And if he's not, he misses his handful of games that he misses basically every year, at least you have a high floor backup. But then you're not giving yourself any chance that high floor backup has a chance of being your potential future franchise quarterback. Or you can draft somebody very high in the draft in the first 2 days, and then that guy comes in and you're using very high draft capital, and there's a major opportunity cost there from other guys that you could be drafting to address other positions on the field, not to mention, the hit rate of second and third round quarterbacks is not very good. So you're still kind of taking a big swing on somebody that, the track record in the second or third round is that you're probably not going to find somebody, and there's a bigger opportunity cost there. So my philosophy here is, let's pick up somebody in free agency that is young enough, that was a high draft pick, that clearly has the tools and the talent to potentially be that. It just didn't work out in their first Stop. And that's not to say that it will work out with Zach Wilson, but there's enough of a track record around the league of these kinds of moves ultimately working and these players finding footing with their second or third teams in the league. With the Dolphins' luck, it'll probably be with their third team in the league, but it might be with their second team, and I obviously the first place everybody goes is Sam Darnold, and it's highly top 5 Jets quarterback, dumpster fire, goes on to be a good quarterback somewhere else. Did he have also a very bad year in like a very brief stint where he got an opportunity in Carolina? Sure. But it's not just Sam Darnold. It's also Geno Smith. It's also Baker Mayfield. There are these quarterbacks around the league that were highly drafted quarterbacks that for whatever reason, it didn't work with their first franchise. They had to take their lumps, and then they eventually got another opportunity, and they were able to make the most of it. And so I think this is a measured risk. You end up paying a little bit more because I know a lot of people were upset when Mac Jones this is unbelievable that people were upset when Mac Jones got signed because they said, oh, we could have had Mac Jones for half the price of Zach Wilson. And like
down bad. That is a franchise that is down bad when your fans are throwing a hissy fit because you didn't sign Mac Jones.
Yeah.
Down bad.
But the reason for that is because the upside is, get ready to take another drink, baked into the price. You end up paying a little bit more because there is some upside there with Zach Wilson that there isn't with Mac Jones. And so I think it's worth it because of what you have at quarterback, because of Tua's injury history. I think you absolutely have to you absolutely have to spend a few more million on the upside, because if Tua gets hurt and Zach Wilson gets in there and he actually performs at a high level, well, then there's a conversation that can be had at the end of the season as far as which direction the Dolphins are going to go with. Is Zach Wilson somebody that they could ride with, and so on and so forth. Whereas if you bring in a Marcus Mariota, a Mac Jones, these guys are 1 year stopgap backup quarterbacks. They will never be anything more than a backup quarterback.
Right. And that's ultimately, I think, where I come down. And I tend to agree with you that, listen, are there players that you could bring in who would give you a higher floor than what Zach Wilson gives you in a backup quarterback? Yes, absolutely. There are definitely players out there that could have provided a higher floor from a backup quarterback. But to what end? Again, is the question. To what end? Because if you bring in somebody to like a Marcus Mariota and they come in and they end up having to play 6 games and they go 3-3 in those 6 games, you get to the end of this season and you know that Tua Tagovailoa it's no longer sustainable to have Tua Tagovailoa as your quarterback. You are no closer to having a solution for your long-term outlook at starting quarterback. Like, you're nowhere near whatever your next step is. The reason that I like Wilson is because there is at least a chance, and I wouldn't even classify it as it being a good chance, a 50-50 chance, not even probably. But the fact of the matter is, if you have him in there, you do have a possibility of having that ace of spades in your back pocket that suddenly he's able to come in and be that guy, and Mike McDaniel can fix another quarterback and take him to that level, and they're able to move on from Tua, and you've got Zach Wilson right there, and now you've got your quarterback of the future, and you're still with an opportunity to build a winning team right now without having to eventually fail and rip everything down to its studs, which is what you would have to do in a situation with a Marcus Mariota or a Jameis Winston or somebody like that. I don't want to go down any more of the road with Zach Wilson because we've got other things to talk about, unless you just want to put a period on this.
Yeah, I just want to put one last thing on it, because people are saying, and you made mention of like there are guys with a higher floor. And that's true. But Zach Wilson still raises the floor of the Dolphins' backup quarterback situation because Zach Wilson is absolutely an upgrade over Skylar Thompson and Tyler Huntley. And so
Yes.
I think it's important to note that people that are like so down on Zach Wilson that think that like, oh, he's just like, he's another Skylar Thompson. No, he's better than Skylar Thompson.
Yes, he is better than Skylar Thompson. So there we are. I guess you could classify, yes, you could classify Zach Wilson in the good signings. Now we're going to transition to what I think are the kind of mid or neutral signings for me. For me, that's bringing back Elijah Campbell. That's bringing back Quentin Bell. I think bringing back D. Eskridge, those guys that you've re-signed, those three guys in particular to me, I think I'm perfectly fine with that. I think those are all guys. Tyrell Dotson is another one of those guys that I think I'm fine with. It's a nice sideways move with continuity in the system. These are good players that deserve a chance to come back and be with the Dolphins. And you're not having to overpay to bring somebody else in to replace them. So I think those are kind of neutral signings there. The Larry Borum signing, I think, again, it's a neutral signing to me because it's offensive line depth. This is potentially somebody who could potentially be another guard, or he's in the conversation to be a backup tackle somewhere, a swing tackle to replace Kendall Lamb. I know he's been actually pretty bad as a tackle previously, but bringing him in and having him work with, Butch Berry, maybe there's more magic there. It's a fine signing. Ashton Davis, I think, as being a depth safety / special teams guy, a fine signing for me. Same thing goes with KJ Britt, who I think is a lateral move from Anthony Walker. Actually is probably a small upgrade there just in terms of bringing some youth, but also bring some thump to him there. So I kind of like that. Today they signed Artie Burns to be they signed him he is a cornerback, but I think he's meant to be more of a special teams role player. And then he'll, kind of hold up the bottom of the depth chart at cornerback. I think it's a fine signing there. Same thing with Pharaoh Brown. I think Pharaoh Brown, the tight end that they signed, it's a fine signing to add some depth and competition in the tight end room. And this is basically a way to bring in a veteran player to be a blocking tight end, essentially bringing in competition for Julian Hill. I know that there are a lot of people calling for Julian Hill to be released, but based on Julian Hill on that very tiny rookie contract, that initial contract makes sense to keep him around for as long as you can. So bringing in Pharaoh Brown just gives you another big physical blocking, more like almost pure blocking tight end for you there. So to me, that's another, signing that I'm neutral on. And then Ryan Stonehouse. Ryan Stonehouse, I might even classify as a good signing for the Dolphins. The punter that they signed, formerly of Tennessee. This is a guy with a very, very big leg, much bigger leg than Jake Bailey. What remains to be seen is whether or not he is as good of a holder as Jake Bailey. But, listen, when you're talking about punters, you're mostly talking about improvement on the margins. And so the Stonehouse signing is maybe neutral, maybe a slight positive for me. Those are the ones that I think are I'm kind of neutral on. Brain, any of those that you would agree? Knowing that there are players that we haven't mentioned yet who we are going to mention in the next segment.
Yeah, I would say that in the guys that are mostly neutral, this is where I would put a lot of those players that you're bringing back. Tyrell Dodson, you're bringing back Elijah Campbell. And they also bring back Quentin Bell. I think, I think, these are moves. These are guys that they brought back on cheap deals that I think, these guys are going to, and in Dotson's case is probably going to be penciled in as a starter. I think KJ Britt is a nice little depth piece for it to have something different at linebacker. The punter is fine. I guess like Ashton Davis, I guess is, but a lot of these, see, like once you get to like these free agent signings, like it's one thing to bring back some guys cheap that are already on your team and you know who they are. But it's like once you get to some of these other free agent signings, it's to me, it's like more about like the opportunity cost than it is about the actual players that you're bringing in, because it just says what you're doing in your free agency. Like to me, Ashton Davis is a guy that, like, if this again, like if I said Melifonwu would be best served to be your third safety, Ashton Davis, I think, would be best served to be your fourth safety. He should be, battling with Elijah Campbell for the safety 4 spot. And so I think you're going into, I mean, at this point, I think it's pretty safe to say they're probably not going to spend a bunch of money, but at safety, but I get before the draft, but I guess like you still have the draft and you have after the draft. So like, I can't definitively say that they haven't done enough to address this room, other than they're going to go into the draft absolutely needing a safety to start. and that's a rough place to be in, because it means that you're going to basically need to draft a safety in the first 2 days of the draft. And it's just, okay, well, how does the board fall? Like, does the board fall where a safety happens to be the best player, or do you end up reaching for somebody? Which, that's the problem there, is that if you have too many of these positions that you're going into the draft needing to fill these spots for starting spots, then you're gonna end up reaching in the draft. And that's, maybe you get lucky, but more often than not, that's how you end up having a disastrous draft, is by reaching on need. I'm not going to mention one of the guys that you did mention in this tier of free agents, because I'm going to put him in the lower tier. But I think I kind of covered it. I guess I would put Alexander Madison. I guess I would put him in here as like a fine signing. He's just a guy. I guess he's got like over the last 3 or 4 years.
Alexander Madison is the quintessential, and I didn't mention him here because I was going to put him in the bad signings but since you brought him up, he is the reason that I don't like him, is that he is the quintessential running back who, when you need him to go out there and get you 1 yard, he's going to go out there and he's going to get you 1 yard. And when you need him to go out there and get you 3 or 4 yards, he's going to go out there and he's going to get you 1 yard.
But that's fine, because honestly, just put him in there when we need 1 yard, because that's been impossible for the Dolphins to do for the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, I just think you already have that guy on your roster.
Who is that guy?
That's Jalen Wright, is that guy that can be that guy.
According to what?
He is that guy that can be the big physical runner for you.
According to what that you've seen from Jalen Wright?
Well, he was not been given the opportunity to do it.
I mean, he didn't show any ability to do that. I mean, he was mostly used as an outside zone runner because he's fast. Can he break tackles? Yes. But is he a guy that's known for, falling forward? I don't know.
Yeah,
I think this hedges a little bit on it. I'm not going to sit here and pound the table and say this was a great signing, but I would say that the stat on here that I think you have to look at the signing of Madison is over his career, or at least over the last 4 seasons, in 3rd and 4th down and 3 or less, he has converted 21 out of 26 attempts, which it's an area that has been such a struggle for the Dolphins. I don't know that it's necessarily been because of their running backs, but if this is something that he does well, and this is a very niche role, and he's going to be the Lusaka Polite of the 2025 Miami Dolphins.
Oh, now we're talking.
I'll take it.
All right. Well, so there it is. There's our thoughts on Madison. All right. Anything else on any of these neutral guys? You want to talk about the punter? You want to do some punter talk?
No.
Good. Well, then that's going to wrap us up for the For the free side of things, we're going to continue this conversation over at Dolphins Talk Extra. And again, a reminder to you that you can join us over there at Dolphins Talk Extra. Patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. For as little as $3 a month, you can join us over there and hear the rest of our conversation about free agency. We're going to have all kinds of other conversations, bonus podcasts. You get access to the Discord channel, access to the contests, lots of fun stuff over at Dolphins Talk Extra. So look, don't just hang out. Go over, sign up, and we'll see you over there in a minute to finish this conversation. But in the meantime, take care of yourselves and each other. And as always, go Dolphins!
What kind of bagel is Alexander Madison?